Are you seriously going to eat, you fat blibbity blabbity blob?
I mean, some of you might be like,
continual.
why would I want to start this?
Sensitive. She's sensitive.
You are listening to the Tami Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast, where we share stories that are, you guessed it, unscripted.
That's the thing, this journey doesn't stop.
It doesn't really
right?
end. We have a general sense of the topic each episode, but really the whole point is just to show up and be authentic and let our inner child speak its truth.
And I have continued to work through that story of constantly hearing, well, we don't want, got a hot dog on our hands. Yeah, guess what, Mr. Sabatsky, you do.
So I'm so excited that you are here, and it is my hope that you hear yourself somewhere in the story so that way you can feel seen and heard as well. So let's start talking. Welcome to the Tami Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast. I have a very special guest with me today, and I'm so blessed and honored that she took time out of her day to join little old me on this podcast because you're kind of a big deal.
Oh my gosh, you're adorable.
So I have Krista Hatcher here with me, and I'll go through her bio, but before I jump into it, I want to share a little bit about like how this came about.
Mm-hmm.
And that, so like I've heard you like on the radio ever since I moved to Madison years ago. But I remember seeing her in the gym, like, passing to the locker room, and I would get there super early, and she was leaving as I was coming. I'm like, wait a second, like, what's happening here? So you were working the morning show then at that time. And then I saw like you have podcasts. I was like, I started a podcast, and I was just like reading through your stuff, and it was just so inspiring to see the work that you're doing. And so I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to reach out and say hi. And your response back was so lovey and just like, I don't know.
You just never know how you influence or how you affect people when you meet them. You know, I had no idea. I'm like, you know, that to me was a very big compliment. So that was sweet of you. Thank you.
Yeah, because it was another woman like out there. And when you threw out some of the topic ideas, it was like, oh my gosh, absolutely. People need to hear your story, and people need to know that there's help and resources out there. Mm-hmm. And so here she is, Krista Hatcher. She is the proud ginger mama of beautiful and amazing daughters, Gia and Raven, not to mention a cat lady.
That's right.
The two furballs, Crunchy and Stinky, which I love those names. And she loves decorating, strength training, camping, riding on a Harley. Watching reruns of Law and Order SVU
all the time, like it's ridiculous, all the time. I have no life.
We all have our guilty pleasures, right?
Yeah.
I was Dancing with the Stars for a while. Like it was like the only show I ever watched, and I joked on here one time that I would catch myself like flinching as they were dancing because I was like, I need to. So her next thing is that her big stress reliever is dancing. I was like, we have that in common.
I love dancing. It is everything to me.
Yes.
Dancing and roller skating are my jams.
Oh my gosh. So as I had mentioned to her that this whole podcast is really around inner child work. And so the fact that you're dancing and rollerblading, like, oh, your inner child must love that. So
yes. I was really sad when the roller rink closed out here because I actually had, I think it was my 45th birthday at the roller rink.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I don't do the blades. I use the old school ugly roller skates.
4 wheels.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can actually visualize that.
Yeah. So that one guy that never left his life as a roller skater, that just is there by himself. That's being amazing on the wheels.
Yeah, that's so funny because I can immediately think when 5th grade, like that was what we did on Friday nights. And I remember like that one boy who everybody had a crush on. And it's like, I wonder if he's that guy. Like he just left the rolling rink because that was like, that was his play. It's like so many events where he's like, I'm just, you know, he went out right there.
So with you, because it wasn't with me doing the couple skate, I would ask guys to couple skate, and I never got a guy that wanted to skate with me.
Yeah. I was probably the one pushing them down.
So well, yes. Yeah, good.
Who knows? But anyways, I love that we have that in common. And again, like just from an inner child perspective, I love that you're doing that.
Thank you.
But also her passion in life is philanthropic work. And that's a big part of that is what we're going to be talking about today. And like ridding the stigma of mental health, bringing awareness to stop being sexual abuse, LGBTQIA, blood cancer, stopping child abuse and poverty, which again, like inner child stuff, like, oh, yeah, my heart. And she's had the blessing of being in radio for 23 years. So she is a professional. And that's why if anyone was like, oh my gosh, whatever, watching my stories well, now this is going to be coming out a week later, but in my social media stories, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. She's a professional. And I don't generally get nervous before these because I just trust my ability to channel whatever needs to come through. But I was like, I'm sweating over here. And
my gosh, Tami, you're adorable.
So just tell us a little bit more about you as we get started, and then we'll kind of dive into what we came here to talk about today.
Sure. Well, again, like we talked about philanthropic work, one of my biggest passions in this community is ridding the stigma of mental health. It's something that needs to be talked about. It needs to be looked at as a strength and not a weakness. And especially teaching our kids that it's okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've had a long journey with mental health. And starting at a very young age, you know, I went through the time of my family departing. My dad and mom got divorced. My sister at the time, once I became 8 years old, she moved in with my dad. And then my brother and me grew up with my mom.
Wow.
So it was really difficult because I truly believe that a daughter's first love is their father's, right? Like we're supposed to learn everything from our fathers,
right,
and how to be treated. And I didn't grow up with my father. And so I always have had issues with abandonment, right? We would do the phone calls, or I would fly out maybe once a year. But, you know, at one time we went 5 years without seeing each other.
Gosh, wow.
You know, and I really, really wanted that in my life.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I find a boyfriend and I put all of that into him.
Yes.
And he took the place of my father. And I don't recommend any girl out there, by the way, to do that.
Well, and you just, again, when I do the inner child work, it's like our ego it does that to try to protect and to get those needs met. And it'll project that onto someone else. And so you're not doing it intentionally. It's all happening subconsciously.
It's all subconsciously, right? And it's interesting. I remember once saying to him, you know, it's not my responsibility to have a relationship with you. And he understood that. But it was very, very difficult between my mom and dad, even on a speaking terms. So unfortunately, it went that way.
Yeah.
But not until I got into college, speaking of that boyfriend I put all myself into, we ended up breaking up. My grandma and my mom wanted me to go off to college by myself, start a new life chapter. And so I went ahead and did that. And then once I was like a junior, so that actually triggered me to be very, very sad. That I lost that.
Right. It just triggers that abandonment wound all over again.
Yes. Not knowing that is what's going on inside of me. And then with my father, everything kind of like exploded. I remember, you know, just thinking about my dad and, you know, and then thinking about this boy and be very, very depressed. And I was literally in my bedroom and I lit a candle and I thought of them both and I downed a bottle of pills and didn't wake up until the next morning. My roommate found me. They brought me to the ICU. The doctor said if I would have waited 2 more hours, I wouldn't have made it.
Oh my gosh.
But what I was really needing at that time was to be able to talk about my feelings. I didn't grow up that way. Like my family on my mom's side, we didn't talk about our feelings. Right. It's if you were, you know, sad or whatever, it's like you're feeling sorry for yourself. So at that time, I really wanted to finally be able to share my pain inside. So I did. I actually put myself into a psych ward. And it was the best thing I could have ever done because it was the first time that I had ever spoken about what I was going through, and having someone on the other side listen to me, because I would never bring these kinds of things up. I just kept them, you know, inside me. So during many years, then I dealt with that anxiety and abandonment and loss. But on the other side of that, my mental health got affected by men who traumatized me, who violated my body.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in 6th grade, my brother had a friend. They hung out sometimes. My brother's 2 years older than me. So I would like talk to this guy once in a while, and we would hang out. All of us would hang out. And I remember him calling me one day and saying, "Hey, Krista, do you want to come over and play Mario Brothers?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, why not?" Not thinking anything, right? Why would you think anything's going to be bad? Right? Like this, you're supposed to be my friend. Mm. And so I get on my pink Huffy bike, right? And I drive my little bike on over to his house. And I think I'm like 10 or 11 at this time. And I remember walking into his house, seeing another boy from my school there standing in the kitchen. And I go to sit on the couch, and this boy that I had been talking to immediately jumped on top of me and started ripping off my clothes.
Oh.
And so I was screaming, and it happened so fast. Like anytime something like this happens so fast. I just remember saying no, trying to fight him off of me, looking at the other guy staring at us during the whole time. Right. And so I was able to, for some reason, push him off me, and I ran right into his bathroom and locked the door. And I literally was like looking all over, the bathroom for a way out.
Yeah.
But the window was too small. And I just remember sobbing in fear, like, I don't know how to get out of here.
Right.
I don't know how to get out. And I just remember him banging on the door. He's yelling at me. He's like, "You need to get the F out because my mom's coming home, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, I'm like frozen. I don't know what to do.
Right. Oh my gosh. Talk about fight, flight, and all of the things. Like you're in survival mode at this point, like literally.
Yeah. How do I get out of here? And just eventually, I remember being in that bathroom for like hours.
So terrifying.
And he finally was like, "I'll let you out. I'll leave you alone." And I just remember bolting out that door, running and grabbing my bike. And I never told anyone.
Oh,
right. I never shared this, but now I realize today he was grooming me, right?
Yeah.
He was grooming me. Well, now let's flip it to the next year. This is actually a summer now that I'm going to visit my dad. So this is 7th grade. My dad used to do these things called rendezvous, where we would go, like a bunch of people would get together and they dress up in tomahawks and with the teepees and everything like that. Yes. So my dad was super into that. So it's like a week-long, event. Yeah. So week-long event. Well, I had met this boy who I had a major crush on. And I remember he was in the reserves or something like that, or probably Boy Scouts, let's be honest. It's one of the Boy Scouts. So I was super excited to see him again.
Yeah.
And so I saw him and I was really excited, and he had a friend with him. And so he introduced me to this friend. And then we just hung out all day, right? My dad's busy doing the stuff that he enjoys. My stepmom's there. My sister's there. We're all doing our thing. And then as the night went on, I remember for some reason we stopped and they huddled around me, and they had given me something. It was a liquid. I didn't know, but I'm like, okay, I'll try. Yeah. Right. I'll try it. And then I remember, for some reason, being in my family's van. Now, my family's van has beds in it, refrigerator, it's the old school, awesome looking van. Well, my sister was sleeping on one side, right, of the bed, and I was sleeping on the opposite. So I'm asleep, and I just remember hearing a voice next to me saying, "Oh my gosh, you're so beautiful." And I'm like trying to wake up in this weird state that I was in. And it wasn't the boy that I liked.
Oh.
It was his friend. He had undid my pants. He had his hand down in my privates. And that's what I remember him saying. And I remember not saying a word. I didn't even make any sounds, right? Because I was frozen again.
Right.
And when trauma happens to you, that's what happens.
That's what happens.
Is you freeze.
Yeah.
And so I never said anything to my sister. I never even moved. I just became out of my body.
Yeah, that's right. Literally what happens is you just check out and you go somewhere else.
And you go somewhere else. And that's kind of right. That's kind of what happened. And anyway, I just then remember waking up then the next day and my sister's still in there. I get out and I go straight to the TP. I see my dad. He, says, "Good morning, honey." And I remember just going straight to that air mattress and crying the whole time and scared out of my mind that I didn't even leave that TP, right? Because I didn't want to bump into him again.
Right.
So that was really trying on me. And since it happened, again, I was like, not understanding, like, why me?
Yeah.
Right? Why me? And then again, not telling anybody, keeping all this inside. So years go by. I'm getting older now. And then at the time I moved to Florida, actually, with my roommate. So now I'm in my 20s. And we move out to Delray Beach, Florida. And I remember we went to Target on a Sunday afternoon at 7:00, and this brand new SUV pulls up. It was like a black Escalade, pulls up in front of my car. So I'm at my car door. She's at the front of my car. And this guy gets out and he goes, "Hey, do you have the time?" Instinct-wise, I thought, "Oh, that's kind of weird," right?
Yeah, like your instinct was talking.
Right. You have a brand new car here. But I decided, I decided to look down at my watch, which was stupid. And I looked up and I saw another guy then getting out on the other side.
Oh my gosh.
Right, of the SUV. And the one guy charged me and assaulted me. And he's like, "Give me your effing purse." And not until I saw then my girlfriend being dragged on the ground by another man. And now she's really small, she's only like 4'11". And so when I saw my friend getting, physically assaulted, I let my purse go. And the grossest thing about this story is that when I looked at the person who was driving it, and it was a woman. Oh, it was a woman. That was really shocking.
Yeah.
Right. And then after they sped away, a whole bunch of people came around us. Like, there was a girl crying. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I wanted to help you. I just didn't know how." And then another guy actually got back in his car and sped off to try to get these guys. 4 months later, I decide to move to Chicago because I want to audition for Second City. So I was really, really excited. I moved there with no job, no place to live, because that's what I wanted to do. I went to school for theater, and improv, SNL, was everything to me.
Oh my God.
I fell into radio.
Really?
Yeah, I got noticed doing my acting recitals. I used to do these parody songs called Fire Crotch for all the redheads out there like myself. One eye, because I lost my eye when I was 5 from a broken hockey stick. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. So anyway, the general manager was and really liked me. And so that's how I got into radio, doing morning shows.
Wow.
So, so 4 months later, moved to Chicago, and I kid you not, I'm on the red line and I get mugged again by 3 guys this time. Yeah. And I just remember my body, my anxiety exploding.
Yeah.
My hands contorted, my body contorted. I couldn't move. I couldn't even pry my hands. And that's when, they called actually EMS or EMT to come try to help me. I just remember them trying to unfold my fingers, but I couldn't.
Wow.
Yeah. So now the anxiety in my body's getting like continuously like worse.
Yeah.
It's just like,
oh my gosh.
and that
way where your body is literally
Right.
shutting down. Like
it's
that's
like, yeah, I was like,
way too
not
much to
again,
handle.
not again. And then, you start thinking, why is this happening? Why is this happening? And then, I remember also living in Chicago, being on the bus. A guy sexually assaulted me there. He put his hands right down my crotch. I remember a young couple just staring at me, not doing anything. But I remember going to the bus driver and telling him, hey, this guy just put his hands down my pants, like in the, not in my pants, but down. And he's like, okay, act like you're going to get off here, but don't. And he got up when I got up. So just imagine.
Oh my gosh. Right.
So those kinds of assaults, so the sexual assaults, the muggings, actually 4 years ago, I was at a bar and the owner actually put his hand on my breast and I froze. It was just me. All my husband everybody was like across the street at my friend's house. So this guy was supposed to be a friend of all theirs. And he's like, hey, do you want to come in? You want to see the place again? Because we used to live in a place called Mount Calvary. And like, sure, stupid. But yeah, he had done that. And then, like I said, I froze. I didn't know what to do. And I literally probably sat there for about 35 minutes trying to think, how am I going to get out of here? And I literally just finally got up the notch to just run the heck out. And I remember telling, my husband at the time, oh my God, that he just put his hands on me. So, now last summer was really difficult for me because I was physically assaulted by what they say in books is the worst person to assault you, and that is blood.
Yeah.
So my sister has been battling. She's an alcoholic, and it's a very, very long story. But unfortunately, she ended up, drinking and completely changed like that because that's what happened to her. She drank vodka.
Yep.
And then she attacked me in my car and right, like hands on my neck, scratches on stuff like that. And at that point, my body just quit. It was, I tried to go to work actually then on Monday.
Right.
And now I know something's wrong with me because I'm there. I can't concentrate. My boss comes in and says, hey, Krista, can you interview these people? I said no. I was like, I've never said no to anyone ever. I just said yes. And I just remember going home, talking to my therapist, who I love, my girl, Lori Asadi. She's been with me for like 15 years. And she goes, Krista, it's time that you seek trauma therapy.
Yeah.
And she goes, I can do all I can, but this is way out of my league. And she recommended that I undergo EMDR trauma therapy.
Yeah.
Most amazing, right, experience ever, because you're going back to these traumas.
Yeah.
Which, all of them to talk. And my I just said it. My sister was the catapult of me spiraling out of control. So, I took a leave from work and just took the time, 2.5 months, to finally just close all those chapters. It's very difficult.
It's incredibly difficult. And again, when you think back to like when this all started, and really even just the divorce itself being a catalyst and having that abandonment wound from that very beginning and craving that attention, from your dad, that love and affection, and just to see how that kept replaying. And I've said this a million times on this podcast, and I don't mean it in this way, but it's like you continue to get the test until you learn the lesson. And like that unconditional love like comes from from within. And if we don't find it within ourselves, we'll search for it. And in your case, it wasn't even that you were outwardly searching for it. It was like these lessons were finding you and like coming at you in the most like traumatic and horrendous ways. Like, oh my goodness. And just the other point I want to get across, and I talked about this with my daughter when she was on here, is how important it is for us as parents. I'm going to start crying because this is like, I can't believe you went through this. Is we have to create a safe space for our kids to be able to talk to us. Because if you would have had a safe space to talk about that first moment when you were in 6th grade or 6 years old, whichever one it was, to be able to go home and talk to somebody about what happened, how that could have changed the course of so much of this. But every time you just suppress that even further because there wasn't that feeling of safety, of who can I share this with? Who could, who would believe me? Would I get in trouble? Like that should never be a thought that crosses a kid's mind. Ever.
And I do want to point on that, going through the EDMR, it was, she instilled that in my head. You had nothing to do with any of these things. No. You're innocent. You're a child. And so that's literally what I was doing. I was looking at myself as a child, talking to her.
Yes. Oh.
Right. And then closing each one of those. And I remember I wrote on a piece of paper of each of the assaults, wrote the entire story of what happened to me. I wrote their names down, and I did a ceremony where I put them all in a fire. And I had all my friends with me, right? They were very supportive, and I kind of like cleansed. Yeah. Wow. And so, that's why to me, it's very important, especially when people say, when women have been assaulted, right, or abused, they're like, well, why are you coming forward now? Why? Because that's how it happens.
That's exactly how it happens. And it truly does start from that foundation of like, I never felt safe to tell anybody. And your ego will tell you these stories about you can't tell anybody. You don't want to get anybody in trouble, especially if you're a people pleaser,
which I am.
Yeah. If your parents separated, like, of course, now you want to keep everybody happy because you just want to keep everyone together. And, again, trying to your ego will do anything to get those needs met, to feel loved, to feel accepted, to feel heard and seen. Right. And oh my goodness, like that should have just,
if I could have like gone back to seeing myself as a child and actually getting help, that would have been a lifesaver for me, even dealing with the abandonment issues, because I will probably always have that.
Yeah.
And it's my biggest fear in life is abandonment.
And it shows up not just in relationships. It shows up in friendships. It shows up in work. It shows up and really when we abandon ourselves, like that's when your inner child, to me, gets the most triggered. Anytime that I have done that, that is when things have really spiraled, because my inner child is like, why are you abandoning us now? If I was denying my intuition, or if I was denying myself to feel my feelings, or whatever it was, right? Like that's when my inner child got the most triggered. She's like, yeah, we get it that you've had abandonment issues with this person and this person, whatever. But when you abandon me,
exactly,
you were all she ever had.
Absolutely.
But your ego will disconnect you from your inner child because it feels like I'm the only one that knows how to keep her safe.
Yeah,
by being a people pleaser, I'm not saying anything because that kept you safe. But it did
exactly.
Not.
No, it did not. No, it did not. And let me tell you, after I did all that therapy, I am not the same person. I am not the same person anymore. And I'm not a people pleaser anymore.
Yes.
Amen. Right? And I'm worth it.
Yes.
That was something that I always struggled with. Am I worth it? Am I lovable? And then to have all these men, just tear me down.
Yeah.
And not feeling, I'm definitely not safe.
Right.
And so that's why I think it's really important for women to be open. You never forget the sound, their voice, the atmosphere, any of that, what you were feeling.
Right. And I said this on here before many times, like when you remember a certain scenario and you remember exactly what you were wearing, you remember all the details about it, it's because your inner child is there are clues in that for you. There is healing in that for you. And it's like they're kind of beckoning you to come back and like reparent me in this moment. Like you said, like writing down that scenario and whether or not you have to go through it in detail, but like if I could have been her parent, like what would I have done? What would I have said? If I could be adult Krista going to that little girl in the bathroom, like what would I have done?
Right.
To help her feel calm and safe, and let her know like your intuition was spot on. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. You weren't to blame. Like you were just a little girl, like having genuine trust in a friend, to be able to go back to her and say those things.
Yes.
To be able, and really letting your ego know too, like, I understand what you did to try to protect her. And unfortunately that like an ego the way I describe it is ego has the best of intentions because it's always trying to get those core needs met.
Right.
But it goes about it in a way that really can put us in harm's way.
Yes.
And really get us in to scary situations. Or maybe even try to take our life because the pain is too full.
Yes. And, I did go through those things where I did want to give up because I was at my lowest of the low. And, that's why I'm a huge advocate of therapy because that's what got me through my darkest battles. And when you finally look within yourself and start to love yourself, that's when things change.
Yeah.
And so, I just want women to know that if they have gone through a traumatic experience, to be able to come forward, tell someone, because you never know the person next to you could have gone through the same thing.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so beautiful when women are vulnerable in their story and sharing that, because it does like let them feel like, okay, maybe it's safe for me to share this too. And to, again, creating that safe space. And it may be like when you talked about going to the psych ward and that being the best thing you ever did, because it was the first time you ever felt heard.
Yes. And I'm in the wacky joint. Like I remember,
people understand me.
I know. I remember my girlfriend from college. She came in with a dozen roses, and they took them from me because they thought I'd maybe used the thorns. And I'm just like, no. But yeah, I'll never forget that experience for sure.
Yeah, but isn't that interesting? Like, it just like the irony of that just blows my mind because it's like, going to the psych ward, are these a lot of people who just never felt seen and heard and their egos have tried to protect them too? Are they really the crazy ones?
Right.
Is it all the people on the outside who are so shut off from their own emotions, don't know how to feel their feelings, but yet look normal when really the ones inside are the ones like trying to find a way to express what's going on inside and not knowing how because we were never taught.
Right. Yeah.
You never had that model of how to safely express what you were feeling, what you were thinking, and
the tools to do that. And, to this day, my mind is clear, right? I've let those things go.
Yeah.
Naturally, though, I don't believe I'll ever get rid of the anxiety.
Yeah.
So I don't have social anxiety, but I have anxiety. Like my body will instantly trigger when it feels it's unsafe.
Yep.
So it'll just happen. So, I think it's just really important that people understand, like, you can be happy and you can be successful living with mental health.
Yeah.
The strongest people that I know wake up every day with it and get out of bed. And it's not easy.
No.
Right?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Well, and there's so much to that too, is it takes a lot of strength and courage to do this kind of work.
Yes.
And to be able to get up and still do those things. But it's also like honoring that there's this other part of you. You're no longer denying parts of you. Like I have fully accepted and integrated my story, healed from it. And there's so much power in that. So like you can channel that into the work that you do and you can see, how it's impacting the work that you do and the communities that you help and the people that you inspire just by speaking about this kind of stuff. And it's, in a very different way, I struggled with emotional binge eating and body dysmorphia and all of those things. And knowing that I had to now go through all of those things to be able to do the work that I do. And knowing, it took me up until the last couple of years to realize how much of this was related back to childhood stuff and not feeling worthy and being the people pleaser and just always being so worried about everybody else. But I did that same thing. Like if things got overwhelming or stressful, like I would dissociate, I would check out, and that makes you also disconnect from your body. So it's like, you don't even know how you feel sometimes. Like, is this mine or is this someone else's? Like, so for you to really be able to sit in everything that happened and like really connect with yourself again and trust yourself again is huge.
And I'm really glad that you just shared that with me, with the body dysmorphia, because I too struggled with that. And in my mind thought, well, if I'm skinny, they'll love me. And it's the only thing I can control. I can control this.
That's it right there. And that happens so often. And divorce is kind of a classic case of that with kids, is because their life just imploded. Their house as they knew it, their life as they knew it, their family dynamic as they knew it, everything changed. And so the only thing that they can control is food. And whether that's overeating, sneaking food, or restricting food. It's the one thing. And that's what ego does. It's like, well, I can't control any of this on the outside, but I can control this. And oftentimes that is also a cry for help. Like, does anyone notice that I'm hurting, but I'm trying to do it through, maybe they'll notice that I'm not eating, or maybe they'll notice that I'm gaining weight, but we always think of things on the surface. And so like, oh, well, you need to eat more, you need to eat less. Like, this is about something so much deeper. This is a cry for help and that they're hurting and they need support through this massive life transition, which is a form of trauma.
Absolutely. And, it's you hurting yourself, but you don't know how to stop. You don't know how to quit. And it's sad to see that, I have a 14-year-old daughter, what kids are doing today to ease their pain with fighting, all that kind of stuff. It's just very, very sad. And, I think we all need to educate ourselves on how do we approach our children and what they're going through. I've always made sure that my daughter knew I was someone she could come to talk her feelings about to me. And I'm very open with mine to her. It's so important to talk to your kids.
And that was, I mentioned that I had my daughter on the podcast, and she'll be turning 11 this October. And we've done a ton of healing, because there was a point a couple years ago where she would not tell me how she felt. And, I read energy, she reads energy. Like, we're not lying to each other. Like, we can pick up that something's going on, but I would have to pull it out of her. And it was like, excruciating. But what I realized, and I shared in that episode, was that she didn't tell me because I wasn't creating a safe space for her, because she was already becoming a people pleaser. She was taking on all of my tendencies because she didn't want to make me sad. She didn't want to make me mad. And once I started to dive into this work myself, I was like, oh my gosh, like, this has to start with me. I have to be safe in my own emotions and be able to emotionally regulate to create a safe space for her to do the same and know that she can come to me with anything. And now it's like a complete 180. And I swear, like, every day I'm like, I'm so proud of us. Because she will just openly tell me like how she felt, like something that I said, or if there was a misunderstanding, and we rebound so much quicker. It's not like, hours or days or weeks go by where there's this disconnect. It's like immediately. And it's like, she gets it now too, but there was a while there where she wasn't doing that. And we're still working on some of her people pleasing things, as I am also working on that, because it's a hard one to break, because that's what received love and a feeling of acceptance. And so even as our adult selves,
but it's a false sense though, right? In the long run, are you satisfied? No.
And it oftentimes builds resentment, because you have to abandon yourself in order to people please.
And in my career, I have overdone things. Being asked to do so many things, and I sacrificed my time with my family. That sacrificed myself, my relationship with my husband. And again, these are things, when you take the time to learn, especially if you're going through that, that's another traumatic experience. Take the time. Give yourself grace. Find out, what do you want inside? Because you can always grow.
There's always an opportunity to grow. And again, I think that's where allowing people to feel inspired and empowered by looking at their story and healing some of that, because a lot of people are like, nope, I don't want to go there. Like it's in the past. I've forgotten about it. Like, and just like you had mentioned, is your body remembers whether you can bring those memories forward or not. Your body remembers. And that's why you instinctually go into those trauma responses.
Yes.
Or why we act out or why we shut down. Like it just happens. Ego takes over so quickly and puts you into that fight, flight, or freeze until you can allow yourself to sit in it, like sit in the feelings, sit in the emotion, like what is it that I'm feeling? And really like, what is it that little Krista needs? What is it that little Tami needs in this moment?
Yeah.
You know, is she feeling, disrespected? Is she feeling, did someone make her like not feel worthy? Well, that comes from within. And it's like, if I'm feeling that from the outside, it's a mirror for me.
Right.
Instead of like pushing that out. Because if we're searching for outside validation, like that, again, it puts us into those situations where we're abandoning ourselves, or gets us into,
or you're doing things that are harmful to yourself to, to avoid the pain, numb the pain. Yeah. And that's why addiction is so out there right now with alcohol and opioids. I mean, people just don't want to feel.
Right.
Yeah. We gotta stop that.
And that's what, it's just one of those things where it's like they're doing those things to numb the pain, yet we are in so much pain by doing that. Like,
Yeah.
And if we could just like know that there is so much healing.
Hope.
Yeah, there's hope and healing on the other side of this.
Because you absolutely deserved, you deserve to be happy, and you deserve to let all this go and finally release so you can have a future. And, because honestly, what happens is that you ruin a lot of relationships.
Yes.
You do. It's a very difficult disease.
Yes. And that, again, like ego has the best of intentions, but what it does is it sabotages careers and relationships and marriages and all of those things. And there's such extremes of what it can do. But you're right.
You live that life with them minute by minute. My stepmom, she died. She was an alcoholic from alcohol, and watching my sibling taking care of her for like 22 years.
Goodness.
Going through every single part of that jail, commissary, bailing you out. The thought that, could this be the last time I ever talk to you?
Right.
So
that was who your sister grew up with, right?
Well, that was my stepmom.
Yeah.
But
you all experienced that, like,
but
it's hard.
It's hard. Yeah.
And it also goes back to, and this is where it's like, it's so beautiful to see you doing the work, and not just on yourself, but doing this work and seeing how it's now impacting your daughter. And like this cycle ends with me, because you can see, well, if your mom or dad like didn't feel safe expressing their emotions, or they didn't have the tools.
Yes.
Well, their grandparents made this whole thing, but like at some point, like this stops with me.
Right.
And that's why it's so important for us as parents or whoever to do this work. Otherwise, we continue to pass down those same traits where our kids don't feel seen and heard. And now they're doing, like you said, like some of the kids in your daughter's class.
Yes.
It's like that stuff is getting passed down. And now those kids are doing some of those same
things. And they're
things.
teaching each other how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really all it is it's that cry for help. Will someone see me? Will someone hear me? Can anyone accept me and love me? And oftentimes it is coming from the parents and from the household. And it's not generally like intentional. We're busy. We're stressed. We're missing the emotional needs. We're focused like, they got food. They got a roof over their head. We're meeting the physical needs.
Yes.
Mostly. But a lot of times we are missing the emotional stuff. And if we're not meeting those needs for our kids, they will search outside of themselves for it.
Absolutely.
And that is the last thing. When I've had that conversation with my daughter, I'm like, I need you to get comfortable speaking up about what you need and what you want. We got pedicures. That was kind of her reward for doing the podcast. The thing was the water was too hot for her. And she looked at me like kind of with wide eyes.
Sure.
And I was like, Aria, like this is
the time
to say, this is how you practice. This is a safe place to practice speaking up about your needs, and that this is too hot. But it's like, if she can't say that now, like that terrifies me as a mom as she gets older, because I don't want her to be in those situations where she freezes and can't say anything. Because that happened to me. And I shared this when I did the episode on sexual shame. And that I was in the gym and someone approached me and I was very uncomfortable. And it was like the most weird, like out of body experience because inside I'm screaming. I know exactly what I want to say. But on the outside, my people pleaser kicked in and I was just like kind of laughing it off and trying to dodge around it. And I was like, okay, well, I'll think about it, just kind of laughing. Right. And inside I'm like, I'm going to think about it. And I was so mad at myself. I was so mad. And like, I knew I was safe. I had friends around and it wasn't like threatening. It was just incredibly inappropriate and disrespectful. Mm-hmm. But I was so mad at myself because like, Tami, and again, I have a 10-year-old daughter. Like what can I teach her out of that moment besides exactly what not to do? And here I am, a 41-year-old woman who cannot speak up for herself and say, I'm not interested. Please leave me alone. Yes. Like it could not come out. I could feel it, but it was literally like I had a blocked throat chakra. It was trapped in there. Yep. And that is, again, that people pleaser is like, I didn't want to make that person feel uncomfortable.
Absolutely. That is a very true thing. I'm exactly like you.
But I'm like crawling in my skin, like crawling out of my skin, wanting to just scream, stop it. I would rather keep the peace. I'd rather not make them uncomfortable. And I was like, oh, never again. Like, I know that came up for me for a reason because I had people pleasing all over in my life. That one was just very much in my face. Like,
absolutely.
Ooh, and this is where it can get scary.
Yes. And those kinds of things then remind you that I have a voice and I'm going to use it loud. Yes. Because believe me, if someone like that comes near me and starts to trigger me, I'm not going to run. I'm going to make sure, you are not going to put your hands on me. That's the thing. So I'm going to fight and do whatever I can and take them down. Yes. But also run away too. Always keep your pepper spray with you. So yeah.
But that's how powerful.
Yeah.
And how now you are the role model and that strong woman for that little girl within you.
Yeah.
Like that, this is who I always needed to be there for me.
This is how strong my daughter is, Shia. I was married for 17 years. She came up to me one time because she knew how hard I was struggling. And she goes, Mom, I just want you to know, I know you and Dad tried really, really hard, but I want you to know, I want you to get divorced and it's okay. And I want you to be happy. Right?
Wow. Yeah.
So she might have been 12.
Wow. Yeah.
So she's a strong little lady.
She's a strong girl to know that she can come to you with that.
Yeah.
And to express that. Like, how do you express that as a kid?
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's just how important it is to have that open relationship because obviously she's noticing what's happening, whether you're hiding it or not, or, even just trying your best. Like, she can pick up on the fact that something ain't working here and this isn't working for anyone. And even if you're trying to stay together for me, this isn't healthy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They see everything. They hear everything.
And they absorb it. And that's where, again, you think about the things that kids, their ego will try to do to make mom and dad happy, or I don't want to get in trouble because they're already so stressed and things are already so hard. So I won't tell them about my rough day, and that's when they start suppressing their own emotions and feelings, or again, acting out. Kids, everyone's ego takes on a different role. Some people are the troublemakers. That's how they get the attention.
Yes.
Some people are the people pleasers, the good girl, or again, the one that develops an eating disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Ego gets real creative, but it all comes down, it's just trying to meet those basic needs.
Yeah.
And as adults, we have to meet our own needs.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. And that's why doing that kind of work is so important to learn how to do that, because if you weren't taught those skills as an adult, you're like, how do I learn to love myself?
Yes.
And it's crazy that we have to do that. And we have to unlearn all of these coping strategies that we developed our entire lifetime, and then have to learn how to love ourselves.
And if I could have gone back as a kid, and that's really what it came down to, loving yourself.
Yeah.
I didn't love myself because I felt unloved.
Yeah.
That I wasn't worthy enough of love. But that, today I do not think that way.
Yeah.
I know I am worthy.
Yeah.
And if anyone that comes into my life and is toxic to me, you can walk away. Anyone that's trying to bring me down, you can walk away.
Yep.
It's important to take care of yourself and to have a circle that's safe and to guard yourself.
Yeah.
Trust your instincts. in whatever factor it is.
Yeah. And it's such an important topic of being able to trust our intuition, because you can see in all of those cases, your intuition was speaking up that something doesn't feel right here, but yet your ego was like, we're going to stay put though. We're not going to say anything. But your intuition is like screaming. And again, we have to almost like learn how to trust that again as adults.
Yeah.
And then to be able to act on it.
Yes.
And that's a huge part. And so for you to be able to find your voice now in all of this, and
I have a loud mouth.
That's the other part is, and so many of the guests that have come on here, we've talked about the gift that was wrapped in the painful package. And wow,
someone's going for a round. I'm trying to make a good point. He's like, yeah, you are. Sure. Can I go on like motorcycles? It was in my bio. That's right.
That part. But about this gift in this painful package, and like everyone has a story and everyone has a gift. And, whether you're an Olympic athlete or you're a piano prodigy or whatever, but like your gift is your voice and your story. Like you were given all of that. Like it seems like really that was the gift in all of this, was for you to inspire and help other women. But it was wrapped in a lot of painful layers of packaging. But you were brave enough to
get through it,
to unwrap each and every one of those. And the way that you did it was so beautiful, is to really honor each experience in the girl, whatever age she was, that had to go through that, and to be able to honor her and give her what she needed in that moment. Like that's so beautiful. And that's where healing is beautiful. So going back through here, trauma doesn't have to be the scary thing,
right? It's your way out. It's a way to connect with yourself finally. And I don't know if it's like forgiving what they did, but when you forgive, you do let go.
Yeah. Forgiveness is for you, right?
Yeah.
Like that frees you.
Right.
And I think but it's almost even like going back at that age, because sometimes we think like, oh, I should have known better or whatever. Like, no, now you can see, no, I didn't have the tools, and I didn't have a safe space to talk to people. And so you can start to understand like, like I was not to blame. And you can almost be like, forgive yourself.
Right.
And that you were in pure survival mode.
Yeah.
And on last week's episode with Sue, and she was kind of talking about, being in an abusive marriage and those types of things. I had mentioned like even going throughout our childhood is that, when your parents went through a divorce or when it just didn't feel safe there, like what ego does is it kind of like puts your inner child in the basement. It's like, it is not safe up here. And that's like when you dissociate but really like ego just takes over. It's like, I'm going to be this people pleaser. And that's who Krista's going to be.
Right.
Yep. Your inner child's down there the whole time. Like, what are we doing up there? And so this work that you've done, like you opened that basement door, like brought her back up, allowed her to be a part of this. And now she's a part of you sharing your story and like letting that be real. Like, yeah, that happened to me, but it doesn't define me. Exactly. And look what I'm doing to now help. Like, what a beautiful way to reparent her and to truly like love her through that. Like, oh,
thank you.
That's beautiful.
Thank you, my love. Yeah.
Wow.
Be strong. Be powerful women, and especially support women.
Yeah.
In every facet.
And I think that's another, and this is where projections can sometimes come in, is you have to be mindful of who you're going to open up and share those vulnerable things with. Because if one person questions you and makes you doubt yourself, ego will shut it down.
Yep.
And so if anyone ever comes to you with something like that, they don't need your projections on what they think happened, or, oh, that person isn't like that. Why would you say that? Or I could never see them doing that. No. That's not the time and space for that. You sit back, you hold space for them, you listen. And like, that's all that person needs to feel validated in their story.
Right. I remember I only once have I felt what it feels like to be stigmatized against for mental health. Because when I was going through my therapy, I just remember one of my friends, and she's no longer in my life. I had to let her go. She goes, well, I've been through trauma. And I'm like, really? You are comparing your trauma to my traumas.
Nope.
It's like the worst thing that you can do and say to someone who's been traumatized.
Oh, yeah, right. Again, it just shuts you down. Like, I guess my story isn't valid.
Yeah. So,
well, and you're right. Like, you have to set those energetic boundaries and actual boundaries with people. And I have shared that on this podcast too, is it is not about comparing your stories. I had a good friend, Corby, on here, and he shared, he was from South LA, and the trauma that man experienced, like even before he was born, like in his mother's womb, it was like, whoa. And I even felt my ego after that be like, wow, Tami, like your childhood story, you poor little white girl with your, small farm town problems. And my ego wanted to do the same thing. I'm like, no. It's not about that. It's not about comparing, because my story is my story. His story is his story. Like, do not ever compare someone's trauma. And again, that is ego's way of projecting, but like,
and there can be just so many negative, jealous people out there that want to see you fail and will take your weakness and use that against you if they can. Narcissists, stay away from.
Yeah. Well, and when you say I'm sure most people, like when you hear narcissist, you kind of like,
yeah.
But what are some of the traits that you have learned to look out for in regards to that?
Well, many times in my career, I've tried personally to help every single person that I've been with in their career.
Yeah.
And, having someone try to destroy me and mine, it's just cruel. I would never, ever try to hurt another woman and bring them down, because of whatever you're going through, because no, my life is my life. This is your life. I've worked my way through it. Nothing was ever given to me. So I think that's super important, that, especially with women, don't compare yourself, and especially don't try to bring them down because you want to be bigger than they are. If that happens.
Again, all ego, still trying to prove something to a mom or dad from their childhood. Like, I got to be better. I got to be the best.
And they're never at fault.
Right.
Egos, you're right. Egos, they want to be front and center. They want to be the shining star. They never will take blame. They'll always be right.
Yeah. Always twist the story back on you.
Absolutely. And they'll never change.
I mean, we can hope that for them, right? And it's like a bless and release. Like, that's when you kind of talked about when you start removing people in your life that aren't supporting you or that aren't creating that space for you. Like that, again, as a people pleaser, that's really hard to let people go, especially when maybe there was love there at one point.
Yes.
And because you are just generally a good person and care about people, that's really hard.
Yes.
But at some point, that was something that I kept hearing over and over in my head, is like, bless and release. Like, I bless you. I hope you heal, but I need to release this.
And it is a hard lesson to learn, right? Especially with me too, being a people pleaser, and just knowing how much, you give and you love. And then it's traumatizing when you realize you were never there for me.
Yeah.
Was this all a lie?
Yeah.
So, again, that's what I say. Just always, love yourself, and especially love those that are around you.
Yeah. That truly are creating that safe space for you. They're the ones that make you feel seen, that make you feel heard, that love you unconditionally, whether you're having a great day or you're feeling all the feels that day. Like, can someone like help you in that moment? Those people you can call when you're just like, I'm having a day, I just need to cry. And they're like, I got you. Like, what do you need? Yeah. I have a friend, our spirit animal together is raccoons.
Okay.
And
they're so cute. Oh, like the babies I love. Yes.
Well, it's kind of an inner child thing. It's like, I grew up on a farm, and so we had pet raccoons every once in a while. And so one in particular, a little coonerator, and she had this whole story about her inner child wearing this like coonskin cap. And that was when she felt her most free as an inner child. And so that was like our little code. We would send a little raccoon emoji when it was like, I'm feeling the feels. Like, I don't need anything from you in this moment. I just needed to let someone know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then you can follow up and ask, is like, is there anything that you need from me? Do you just need me to hold space? Because it's very interesting when you do sometimes reach out for help. Again, if it's someone that hasn't maybe worked through their own stuff, maybe they were the fixer. And so now they're trying to step into your stuff and fix you. Like, and I don't need you to fix me.
Right.
I'm not broken.
Right.
But again, if you make them feel uncomfortable because you're feeling their feelings and they don't know how to feel their feelings, like they want to either change the subject or they're going to make it about them or try to fix you.
Yes, absolutely.
And we just don't know how to hold space. I actually had someone, when I said that, I was going through some really hard stuff and they were definitely the fixer. And I said that, like, I don't need fixing. I'm not broken. I'm like, I just need you to hold space for me. And her response was like, I don't know what holding space means besides a fancy word for saying fuck off. And I was like, wow, okay.
That's not what that means.
That's not what that means. That's actually a very loving way of saying, like, yeah, I appreciate your love and support. Just
be
like
there
energetically.
Yes.
Yes. I don't. Yeah. And it was like, okay. And, and that's one of those things where it's like, okay. And this is where you start to learn. And there's a great quote that's really helped me a lot too, is you can't speak butterfly language to caterpillar people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's no no disrespect in that. But when you have gone through this stuff and you have gone through a healing journey and you had to go through that metamorphosis part, and some people haven't gone through that yet. Like, you have no idea what it's like.
They don't know how to understand it.
Don't know how to support you and help you. And so that's where it's like, oh my gosh, I understand it. I understand why when I was going through the hardest moment in my life, like some people bolted because they didn't know how to sit in their own emotions. How are they going to help me sit in mine? So maybe that was the best thing they could do for me, was to give me space and just back off. But really at first, my ego, that hurt to know that there were people that weren't there for me. But I'm like, I don't know if they knew how.
Right.
And so maybe that was their coping strategy, you know? So it's
your classic, thought of when, someone puts you down, is that it's because they feel, there's something inside them they don't like, it's like classic, we've all been through that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the conversation I've had with my daughter a million times, when she comes home from school and, a kid says something, and like, now we talk about that from an ego perspective. I'm like, well, maybe that, and she gets that now. And so I'm like, gosh, at 10 years old, for her to be able to know, like, oh, that's someone's ego because of this. And I'm like, oh, like I mean, like, that is a superpower that you can discern, like, what is ego and what is someone's true self. And that there's a genuine good person in there.
Okay.
That ego is, kind of,
well, you're doing good, fabulous, mama.
I'm trying. Yeah, man, it's every day. And I allow myself to make mistakes because I need her to know, like, I'm human too. I get triggered too. I fall back into trauma responses too. And so sometimes, like, if I, snap or I say something I didn't mean to or react in a way I didn't want to, like, I can go to both of my kids and say, like, I had a big response too. Like, that kind of triggered me, but that was not about you.
Right.
And I think that's such an important part of this, is because we need to help kids detach from stories, because ego will take a story like, well, maybe your parents got divorced because you weren't good enough. You weren't lovable enough. You couldn't keep them together. And so ego will take this story and you see what it does.
Yeah.
It creates this massive worthiness wound when it had nothing to do with you.
Right.
That was between you and your parents. Like, there's nothing you could have ever done to save that.
Yeah.
But look at that wound that created. And so being able to detach, like, allow your kids to detach from that. You come home from a stressful day of work, you can say that to them. Like, you know what, even if you snapped, like, you know what, I'm really sorry that I snapped. I was really stressful at work today. That was not about you.
Right. I need to walk my butt right into the bathroom and take a nice bubble bath, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
And just take that moment, take a break.
Yeah.
Take a break.
But that's part of it, is that's where the unlearning comes in for us adults, because we weren't taught how to do that. We weren't taught how to emotionally regulate. We go from 0 to 10, but yet we expect our kids to be able to emotionally regulate. It's like, well, that's interesting.
Great day.
Right. So, well, and just Yaman the other day, we came home from a long weekend and I had an hour and a half drive, and I'm like trying to even just stay awake, and I'm hungry by the time I get home, and we finally get here and I'm just like, ugh. And then same thing, like, he's tired, he's on the floor, and he's just like, hey mom, can you get me this? And I'm like, dude, I'm not your maid. Like, I don't remember what I said, but I must have said it in kind of a snappy tone. And, then whatever happened, and I ended up getting it for him anyway. But then he comes to me and he's like, mom, that made me really sad when you said that. And I was like,
yeah.
And I'm like, Arlo, thank you for telling me that. Like, thank you so much for letting me know how you felt, because that was not about you. Yep. But if I wouldn't have told him that, like he could have created this little story that mom was mad at me and I was too needy. I was being a burden. That is the last thing I want for my kids. Like, oh, I can't even ask my mom for anything anymore. Sure. It's like that one little thing can turn, it's like that little mustard seed that just takes off and grows. Like that's what can happen in those little moments, subtle moments. Ego attaches to the story and creates this huge thing out of it. And so, but I could right then and there be like, that wasn't about you, buddy. Like, I'm sorry. I could have responded better. Mm-hmm. I'm also still not your maid, but you are still getting while I'm getting that. I still gotta go with my daughter who's 14 with that. So, and that's part of it too, right? Is we tend to then sometimes overcompensate for the love and support that we didn't get.
Yes.
But we also realize that
guilt.
Yeah. And guilt. Oh my goodness. Yeah. But we also can now see like, oh, I don't want to deny them the gift of creating that sense of self and independence too. So it's a fine line, but we have to unlearn that stuff. Yes. Like, okay, how can I empower my daughter yet still be there for her? But we realize like it's meeting our need when we do that.
Oh, yes. And when your child hugs you and tells you they love you and that they're proud of you, it's the best gift in the world.
Yeah.
It's the best gift in the world.
Yeah. And sometimes I think, we might be afraid to do this work or disrupt, things within a household again because of our children, but they need to see you do this right. They need to see this strong, empowered mom speaking her voice, advocating for not just you, but for them, like to be this happy, confident woman again. Like that's the role model they need. And so, that might have disrupted life for a little bit, but if you create that emotional safety, like kids are going to get through that.
And they're watching you. I mean, not too long ago, actually, I lost my job from budget cuts. I had been with my radio company going on 10 years. Wow. And I literally was in awe. Like I froze. And I'm like, did I just, it's been like 24 years I've been in this career now. And I'm like, did I just lose my entire life? Ooh. But I just remember the minute I got home, I had to be in action. I was not going to fail because I need to teach my daughter never to give up.
Ooh.
And it's so important. And you have to put that in your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't being angry. I wasn't, I didn't allow myself to get depressed, any of that. Wow. I need what's next? Let's go. Yeah. Let's go.
Well, and what's really interesting about that is that really could have triggered an abandonment wound all over again, like fear of rejection.
And you're right. It actually did. I after like months, I'm with iHeartRadio now, which but yeah, it is another form.
Yeah, that's how that shows up.
What did I do wrong?
Right. Yep. Oh, I'm not worthy. They don't want me. I'm not. All the things like that's what it does. But for you to be in that moment and you absolutely like need to feel the feels of that. Like, wow, that hurt. And maybe I don't understand it, but maybe it had nothing to do with me and that it truly was simply budget cuts or whatever. But so you're not twisting that story.
Right.
But yeah, sometimes you need to sit in that like, wow, that hurt. And maybe I'm a little scared. But because you can stay in it and you can sit in it and feel your way through it, you can quickly get to the place of taking inspired action, taking empowered action. And like, because you are still driving the bus. And I've used this analogy on this podcast a lot is ego always tries to take over the wheel of the bus and think that it knows how to drive, get to happy, inner child land when it doesn't. Obviously yours took a lot of detours on a lot of scary lanes.
Right.
But in that moment, like you said, like, okay, I just lost my job. I'm still ego probably is like wanting to take over. Like, I got this. We're going to go into that trauma response. We're going to shut down. We're going to do this. And you're like, no. Okay. Yeah, that was scary. I'm feeling that, but I know where we're going.
Yep.
And like, that's the gift in healing is that you get to stay in the driver's seat of your life. And it, like you said, like it creates freedom. It creates possibility because now like you've brought your inner child into all of this and like you are driving, you are that role model. Like it just opens up so much of your life because you're not trapped in this.
Right. You got to go. You just, and I just think because of everything I've been through, it's made me stronger. It's made me the woman I am today. Resilience is everything when you go through something. And so, like you said, you always wonder like, what is my gift on earth? What am I here for?
Yeah.
And, just today, my gift is showing that my daughter that, be strong, little lady, be a lady boss.
Yeah.
Be kind.
Right.
And
work hard.
Yeah. Know your worth.
Know your worth.
Yeah.
And let's not get into liking boys anytime soon.
I'm just so not ready for that. You make a good point though, because that could absolutely bring up stuff for you. But that's where you can stay in the driver's seat and know that I have put in so much work on myself and empowered my daughter to be able to trust her in those situations.
Yes.
But it absolutely being aware of that, like, okay, and that's what you want ego to do, is to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, when your daughter starts dating, that might bring up some stuff for you. That might trigger you. And now you can be like, okay, thanks for the heads up. Thanks for the warning. Now I can be proactive.
She doesn't like that. I'm very protective of her.
Yeah.
And, that's just how it is. And I have to explain it to her. And now she's like, Mom, I know why. Yeah. I know why. But I'm like, I can't put you in situations where you can get hurt. Yeah. Like I was.
At the same time, she'll never be in that exact same situation because she knows she can always come to you, even if she did get into a situation.
Yes.
Like you will always be that foundation for her.
Yeah.
But what you have taught her just by your example of healing and advocating and finding your voice is and not being a people pleaser anymore. Like that's what our girls and boys need to see.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I will say too, just real quickly, to anyone who's been through abuse, there are people there to help you.
Yeah.
There are people there to help you.
Yep.
Talk to your friends, talk to your family. Tellurian, they're out here locally.
Yeah.
Dear friends of mine. It's a talk.
Yeah. And sometimes it might even start there, like an outside person who doesn't know your story, because even sometimes family could deny your story or whatever. So like I mentioned before, you would need to be mindful of that. So you are making sure that you're feeling seen in that. And so it might be going to someone just completely like
exactly
out of your situation that doesn't know anything about you, just to truly feel validated and then be able to move forward and start to speak more openly to it.
And if someone ever makes you feel bad, makes you feel like you're crazy, all those kinds of things, there are people that don't believe in anxiety, depression, any of that.
Yeah.
Then that person is not needed in your circle.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. And you can walk away now.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's one of those things, like the more you understand projections, you're like, oh, that's a you thing.
Yeah.
But I also, I don't need that in my life. And so bless and release.
Yep.
Yeah. And you will start to see that your circle gets smaller, but the quality.
Yes.
It's much more about quality over quantity when it comes to having this kind of support. And so, and just, I can't thank you enough for sharing this story, because,
you're so sweet.
People need to hear this. And again, just giving, and I hope that anyone listening, if you're feeling that, gut feeling or that lump in your throat, or you've gotten goosebumps throughout this, and you might not have all the pieces of your puzzle. You may not even know if things happen to you, but if something in this like made you want to sit up or brought emotion up, and maybe know where it's coming from, like allow yourself to feel that and just start to look into it. Or reach out to me or other support out there and be like, I need to explore this a little bit more.
Look into this.
Yeah, because that is your body, and you're basically your inner child knocking on the door like, did you hear what she said? Do you remember when you were 6 years old? Do you remember when you were in middle school? Like that's for you to look at. But sometimes we're like, yeah, but I'm not opening that door. Like, no, you need to open that door. Your inner child needs you to open that door and to validate her story and to just be there for her and love her. And then like you said, you can close the chapter. It doesn't have to be this like ongoing open thing forever. I mean, there's always going to be there. Like you said, there's parts of that will
you never forget.
But the peace you can have around it, like that's what frees you. And it's not crippling where it literally shuts your body down anymore. Like you'll feel it. You can still, feel that trigger, but it's not debilitating. You can still function and now be even more successful because now you're channeling all of that pain into this beautiful purpose.
Yep.
Like that's amazing. And hopefully that empowers people to explore when those feelings come up.
Yes.
And to not suppress them, because that
is the biggest gift you can give to yourself is to find that therapy and to heal. That was the biggest gift I've ever given to myself.
Yes.
Was to finally get the help.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that I did. Yeah. It's great. It is great. I like this new me. I love how I feel. And, life is good.
Yeah.
Life is good.
Well, and then it's using your voice in such an empowering way versus using it to kind of like disguise or hide what's really going on, right? Like we can be the loud and funny one to hide our pain, but now you're using it in a way to like, no, this was my truth and I'm going to share this to help empower other women to speak up to.
Yes.
And that's a beautiful gift.
We got you, girls. Yeah. Speak up.
Well, you also, so not only are you on the radio, but also you have a podcast as well. And that's what was like fangirling.
You're so shame.
But talk a little bit about that and just another way where people can even just connect with you, because what you're talking about, this kind of stuff, I think just connecting with your energy alone just is like this feel good.
Thank you.
Energy that you have.
So yeah, the podcast is called the Madtown Mom Squad. It's myself and 3 other fabulous mamas with Dr. Jazz, Karina Crade, and Shanna Powell. And we talk about real moms having real conversations and getting deep within them. Our highs, our lows, having great guests on that can help educate.
Yeah.
How do we do better?
Yeah. Well, and I was just like going through the topics the other day. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is, again, such an amazing resource, because a lot of us don't have those tools. Like, how do you help a teenage girl who's now dating or going to prom or, starting to think about, sex and all those things? Like, when that was never a topic growing up, like, when I was talking about on one of the episodes where I was hiding my tampon in the women's locker room, like, what?
Still get embarrassed. I have to go to Walgreens. Is that ridiculous? I'm 47 years old and I get embarrassed. Like, here's my tampon box.
I know. It's a known thing, right? There are no secrets, but what?
It's so stupid.
There's so much shame.
I know.
Yeah. To the point where it's ridiculous.
It is.
If we can't like openly buy tampons or carry them in the locker room,
I know.
What are we going to do in those other big situations? Like, that's why this work is so important. And I had that conversation with my daughter, and she does like get like, oh, Mom, I can't talk about this yet. I'm like, all right, we need to, because I don't want you to be my age and still feeling like uncomfortable in your body or shameful in your body or hiding your tampon. Like, no, we're not. No, like this ends here. And so if we have to sit in a little bit of discomfort to eventually open up about this, like we're gonna. Like, I'm toying with her. I'm not like forcing her into it. I don't want to create trauma just by having the conversation, but
for the day that I went through that with my daughter, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. She's gonna like, no, okay, I don't know, I teach her or whatever, but it just comes to naturally. So with anything that, we've been through, because I don't understand why we get all the crap in life.
Right.
Yeah. Come on now.
Well, when you start to see, and it's really interesting when you see some like the videos on Instagram and they show generational trauma. So like going back a couple generations, like, people are going through the depression, like the trauma they experienced, and then how that morphed into that next generation, a little bit different, but you could see how it trickled down. And like someone's abandonment here looked very different 2 generations later. And then to see it in you. And so it's fascinating. Like it truly does get passed down if we are not the ones to say this ends with me.
Very true.
And so to be able to have a resource like that where like, hey, this is an uncomfortable topic. Like, oh, here's a podcast that can actually like give me some real mom advice on how to approach this. We need that, because you're right. Like our generation, like we were not taught that, and no fault to our parents because they weren't taught either.
Right. So exactly. Yeah, exactly. So so it's on iHeart's, podcasting platform. So you can follow us, subscribe, and I talk about it. I promote it on Z104 and Star Country. So it's fun. And we just had Vicky Gumbelson, the OG of the OC on. Oh, I love it. Real Housewives. Oh my God. That's fun. Yeah. Vicky Gumbelson's from the Midwest. And that's what we were talking about, how to be a fierce working woman, mother, being able to do all, balancing it all together. Yeah. And especially her big thing is women do not rely on a man to support you. You need to support yourself. Yeah. It's very, very important.
Yeah. And again, that a lot of times goes all the way back to childhood and conditioning and all, and that codependency. But you're right, to be able to support women in that. And like not only to find your own self-love, but to be able to support you in all aspects.
Because you never know what'll happen.
Yeah.
Divorce can happen.
Yeah. And again, that's reaching for outside validation or depending on others. Like you have to be able to find all of that within yourself. And then anything else you find on the outside is just like the cherry on top.
Right. You're like,
what? Yeah.
Oh, that's I'll have to listen to that one. I'll make sure you hear it.
Thank you so seriously. I mentioned that this girl, I knew her a little bit, but I knew about her from like kind of stalking her recently. And that we were literally just going to talk about sexual assault. I had no idea anything else about her story. So like I was now mentioning like how like I generally don't get nervous before these, but I'm like, oh wait, we are really just diving in. And
yeah, this was definitely unscripted.
Definitely unscripted, but in the most beautiful way.
Yes. But thank you for, asking me to be a guest and allowing me, to share my story, because that's important to me. And that's really what I want to do, is help other women. So thank you for the gifts. Yeah, girl. Thank you. Thing right now. Yeah, here's my one. Yeah.
So funny. A friend of mine, we were walking one night. We were like watching the full moon, and she's like, "Should we brought pepper spray?" And I was like, "No, we brought guns."
Yeah. She's got the gun show for her.
So we you have to be real about that stuff, unfortunately. And so, well, thank you.
Yeah, girl.
Well, and this has been like a huge, part of my life, and therapy in a sense of working out has been a way that I process my emotions and feel through my feelings and all that kind of stuff. And that created a safe place for me. And really, like, I know we keep wrapping up and I jump to another thing, but sometimes when you can practice being uncomfortable in a safe setting, that can help us start to learn how to regulate and not go into a trauma response. Because when you're working out and you're like on that last rep, like,
that's good.
Yeah. But it can also like, it's that like, oh, this is hard. I want to just check out. I want to like, no, stay in this and work through that last rep. Like it helps you stay in it. So when feelings get uncomfortable, like, no, sit in it, stay in it. You can do this. Like there's so many metaphors when it comes to the gym and working out, when it comes to like healing and feeling your emotions. And so,
well, you let me know when you want to start training mine. I gotta get back.
You've been doing the work in other ways, and that is. And sometimes it has to come in stages, right? Like I needed to really focus on this.
I did. Yeah.
Now I can bring these other layers back that support you.
Because I was telling her, I'm like, well, when I was going through my divorce, I just stopped working out.
Yeah.
Stopped, and I don't understand why, because that made me so happy.
Yeah.
And so yes, now I'm getting this body into the gym, and I'm getting butt back. I don't know what's. Just leaves everything. So
no doubt everything that you have set out to do, you have done, and they look amazing for all you have done and been through. And
thank you.
But just thank you for being a light.
Yeah. We're so proud of yourself. We're so proud of you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. And again, make sure that if any of this resonated, that you reach out for help. I will put some links, below this episode for resources. So you have an outlet, and you're always welcome. I will always hold space for anyone that needs to share their story and feel validated. And so I'm just a message away as well. So thank you again, Krista. Go check her out. And we will see you next week.
Bye.